Welcome to Ziffity Quick Chat.
The customer of the B2B company is demanding e-commerce. So I don't believe this is, the death of a salesperson. But, ultimately it's about the leadership making difficult change and facing uncertainty. If you're uncomfortable, that's a good thing. It's now a mandate. It's no longer an option to be in e-commerce if you're in B2B. There is so much ROI in e-commerce for B2B companies, and it comes from many places.
Despite the healthy market scenario and the B2B e-commerce market scenarios, growth trajectory of the B2B e-commerce market is also looking great. So despite this healthy change in the market segment, why are most of the B2B companies still only depending on their traditional buying and selling ways?
Because I believe that we're going to see a blend of, and we are seeing this, a blend of traditional selling approaches, the sales force, as well, informed by digital. So I don't believe this is, the death of a salesperson. If you think about the Arthur Miller book, his famous author, who wrote Death of a Salesman, this isn't death of a salesman. This is an evolution. Here's a couple statistics for you. 30%, there was a survey done of CFOs, I think it may have been by McKinsey, that said 30% of people are still going to continue to work from home. We are in a different environment now globally, post-COVID, where people are working from home. There's hybrid work environments. What does that mean for a traditional selling approach? It means you have to change how you're doing sales, right? You can't, getting access to people is not as easy as it used to be, where you can go to an office, walk in and, bring a box of donuts if you're a salesperson, right? And I think, I think, COVID accelerated a lot of things that were already happening. And in many cases, and then necessitated the need for those buyers to go and buy through digital channels. So you may ask yourself, well, gosh, why are companies still not investing in some cases in e-commerce? Well, you still have a lot of legacy momentum and thinking where, this is and I document this in my book, right? This is a brave new world. This is stuff that, e-commerce and digital is stuff that the senior level executives didn't grow up with in many of these companies. They're not comfortable with it. There's a bit of fear. There's a bit of uncertainty. But quite frankly, we got to get beyond that. And companies that are reticent to invest because, business has been just good enough. Well, guess what? With COVID, 50% of buyers are now buying from suppliers they never bought from before. The world has changed. And there was a study done about 2 years ago by a company called Digital Commerce 360. They asked the question, why haven't you invested in e-commerce if you're a B2B company? And the number 1 and 2 answers were, number 1 was they don't have the leadership buy-in. They were asking, marketing and digital and sales executives. They don't have leadership buy-in to make the right investments. And number 2 was there's not enough money at the company to make the investments that are required. Both of those factors are an indictment of leadership. I think that points directly to, a challenge that exists at the top level of many companies. It's less so now than it used to be. But, ultimately it's about the leadership making difficult change and facing uncertainty. If you're uncomfortable, that's a good thing. That means you're doing some of the right things, right?
Yeah, it's growth.
If you're a leader. Yeah, exactly. Real ROI from B2B e-commerce. And that's one of the reasons companies should invest in e-commerce and digital transformation. And I'll give you an example. Oftentimes, Rem, it's, people feel like it's reserved only for the biggest companies. But one of there's a case study in my book. It's a small fastener distributor, right? So you think about companies that are, mid-market. They're in highly competitive fields, in this case, fastener distribution. I mean, fasteners are a commoditized product. We're talking about screws, nuts, bolts, those kinds of things, right? Yeah. There's nothing more commoditized, really, in the B2B market. So, You think about somebody who's running a distribution business who isn't manufacturing the product, so they don't have a brand necessarily to fall back on. Well, this company, they're called Bay Fastening Systems. I've just been so impressed with them. They're doing so many interesting and innovative things. And you talk about why do you do e-commerce? Well, these guys about 6 years ago decided to launch an e-commerce site, right? At a time when some companies, a lot of companies still weren't fully engaged in e-commerce. Well, they have almost doubled the size of their business directly attributed to e-commerce. Wow. So they're getting 10 to 20 new customers every single week using digital marketing methods like search engine optimization. And it's because they're well optimized and they launched in their e-commerce site to be SEO friendly. So they're seeing, number one, new customers. And if you're a B2B company and you're listening today, if you're getting 10 new customers a week, that's enormous, right? That's because again, B2B companies around, they don't have, they're not 5 million consumers in their database. They have a set group of companies they look to work with, and those companies frequently repurchase. So if I'm a fastener distributor and I'm doing a good job with reaching these customers and then eliminating friction in the buying cycle, I'm going to get them back again and again to buy from me continuously, because it's, guess what? Easy. It's one of the key things I talk about in my book, eliminating friction in the cycle. So why do you do it? Number one, new customers. Number two, expanded wallet share from customers. Some of the companies that I profiled in my book, including Bay Fastening, they're getting more share of wallet from their customers than they had in the past. Why? Because they're doing a good job making it easy for that company to buy from their customers, to buy from them using e-commerce. So, I've got examples of companies that are, 150, 200% more share of wallet from an existing customer. They're getting more of that customer's purchases. And these are existing customers. And again, it's by making it easier for them to buy and also exposing more of the catalog. Again, you think about fastener distribution, right? Our poster child here, Bay, they've got, tens of thousands of products, hundreds of thousands, I think, actually. And they're more able to, using digital technologies and techniques through their e-commerce site, expose more of their catalog as well. It's hard for a physical salesperson to know everything, or even an inside salesperson to know everything about every aspect of a catalog that's that big. Well, using digital tools and artificial intelligence and search and other things that good e-commerce can deliver, you can expose more of the catalog at the right time to that customer and increase your wallet share. And then finally, there's tremendous, when we think about ROI and in cases like Bay Fastening, there's also tremendous efficiencies. And he's got some metrics. He is the COO who I'm talking about here at Bay Fastening. Michael has some just tremendous statistics around savings and really efficiencies driven by customers self-serving on the e-commerce site. Where is my order? Looking that up themselves, finding out if something is in stock, checking in on order or product specs and things of that nature. That stuff happens digitally, and then it saves the time of your sales team to really add value, to become more strategic. And you engage the sales team when it's necessary, not every time. Guess what? The sales team doesn't like getting the calls that say, hey, Joe, where's my order? That's not a great use of a salesperson's time, right? So they're able to repurpose time. So you get this efficiency. There is so much ROI in e-commerce for B2B companies, and it comes from many places. So, I mean, that in itself is reason to do e-commerce. Of course, in addition to your customers demanding it, that's another overriding factor here. But the ROI is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, e-commerce for B2B is not an ROI killer. It's like accelerating ROI. In left, right, and center actually. So your point on your example about Bay Fasteners, right? Yeah, Bay Fasteners is a real good example, because there is a lot of stages where e-commerce is adding value in terms of ROI, right from offloading sales teams, initial work and all. In acquiring new customers and all, and and by reducing the friction, I mean, like you save a lot of time, and you keep getting back customers, because like in B2B, as you said, they work with a very close set of repeated customers, and most of the B2B companies who are still in traditional ways don't even think of new customer acquisitions. They mostly rely on the word of mouth kind of new customer acquisitions. When
Right.
like B2B commerce is actually opening the gates for acquiring new customers at like very less additional cost and effort of the marketing or the sales team. It's a lot of opportunity over there. Actually, if at all a company has decided to uh, take the digital commerce plunge, and they are preparing to plan their e-commerce transition. So, what would be your tips for such a B2B company in order to plan or prepare for their e-commerce transformation from ground up?